Hello, this is saxophonist Antonio Parker, and this is A Conversation in Jazz, where we are promoting jazz through telling the stories. Our guest today is the lovely vocalist, also known as Diva Blue, the lovely Miss Alison Crockett. We are indeed delighted to have her join us here in conversation. We ask you to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon so we can let you know when we are posting another video or going live. We also ask you to donate to our Cash App in order to support the channel and help us to produce future videos. Our Cash App is $Jazzology 101. That's $Jazzology 101. Enjoy the video. Hi, this is saxophonist Antonio Parker, and this is A Conversation in Jazz. Our guest today is an artist whose music I would describe as truly eclectic. You might describe her as a jazz artist, funk, neo-soul, hip-hop, gospel, or R&B style vocalist. But her music encapsulates the spectrum of Black American music and indeed world music. She is the dynamic vocalist, singer, songwriter, and educator who continues to push the envelope in new musical directions. Please welcome the wonderful vocalist, also known as Diva Blue, Miss Alison Crockett.
How you doing?
Alison, how you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah, welcome to A Conversation in Jazz.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
And happy Jazz Appreciation Month.
That's right. It's Jazz Appreciation Month. Yay.
I don't know where we met. I know maybe at Westminster, and we I knew Rob Landon, so we
Yes.
who I from Philly, so we met through. I know he was there, and I knew you as a jazz artist. You know, I mean, like I'm talking about not just a jazz artist, but like the creme de la creme kind of jazz artist. You know, so I always known you as a traditional straight ahead jazz artist.
Well, that's how I started.
And we've done some things with Thad Wilson.
Yes.
And so, so as I was preparing for this interview, I said, well, let me go and listen to some music. You know, I went on YouTube and and I'm hearing this like electric music, dance music, and the old funk.
It's like, who is this?
I was like, is there another singer named Alison Crockett?
No.
And so I started going a little deeper, and I was pleasantly surprised. You know, and I said, wow. So this is what we do here. We get to, I call it, we know the story behind the story, and I get to know a little bit more about you, some things I didn't know.
Yeah, well, Americans, I did a lot of work overseas. And even though I did some of that work here in America, I didn't tour as much in America.
Okay.
And so a lot of bluntly Americans just didn't know some of the stuff that I was doing.
Yeah.
And in terms of doing the different things, I look back on the first big record that I did with King Britt, and I think I sang 4 cuts. And even in the press that was going on at the same time, they were ascribing songs that I did to other artists that were on there because it was a collective. Yeah. Because I sounded completely different depending on what kind of stuff I was doing.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was totally different artists. You know, wow. Well, that leads us into my first question I like to ask people. And my first question is, who is Alison Crockett?
Oh, that's a big one. I don't know. I'm an artist.
Okay.
I'm a mother. I'm a thinker, sometimes obsessor.
That's all good.
I'm a vocalist, I'm a pianist, I'm a gardener, I'm a person who is passionate, someone who always wants to grow.
Yeah.
I'm a friend, I'm a counselor, I'm an encourager.
All good. Educator.
I'm a teacher, yes. I'm a human. I'm a
beautiful.
Black American.
Yes.
I'm a big plethora of things.
Wow. I think that's the best answer to that question I got. Oh, wonderful. So, who is Diva Blue?
Oh. I used to have a bio for her.
Really?
Yeah, I did. I used to have a bio for her. She used to drink tea out of martini glasses and have mango lattes and things like that. But Diva Blue was created by King Britt, and she was or is the quintessential jazz singer. That sung the song "Seasons Change" and "New Love" on When the Funk Hits the Fan. And when I was with us three, I was contractually bound to them, and I could not record with my own name.
Wow.
And so I had to use Diva Blue in order to record.
Oh, wow. That's
And
heavy.
so,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff
Yeah.
out there in the industry of people who you're like, we know who that is, but they're not recording under their own name because they're contractually bound.
Yeah. Cannonball Adderley had a name that he had to go under. I can't think of it right offhand, but it was the same kind of situation.
Yeah.
So wow.
Yeah. So so I actually did, once I got out of that contractual situation, I actually did a remix record called The Return of Diva Blue.
Okay.
So,
we're going to talk about that. Yeah. So are you a diva?
I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean,
What is a diva, by the way?
Oh gosh, there's like a dictionary definition of a diva, a great and wonderful singer, and it's generally come from classical singers who came out and they were big, bold, and brash, and very passionate, and I guess I have aspects of that, and different people have taken on what a diva is, and
So is it an attitude?
there's an attitude to it. I just look at it as, and I call myself Miss Diva Blue because, damn it, you gonna respect me.
Gotcha.
And so it started happening like that in terms of Diva Blue. I added the Miss because people would say Miss Allison, and I was like, yeah. Respect me, and that,
no doubt.
and I guess I don't know. I put that for others, I guess, to figure out.
Gotcha. It's all good. Now, where are you originally from?
I'm originally from the Washington, D.C. area.
Really?
I grew up in Potomac, Maryland. I went to Duke Ellington School of the Arts and Sidwell Friends.
See, I didn't know that.
I'm one of the only people that you will ever meet that graduated from 2 high schools at the same time. I did.
You graduated from 2 high schools at the same time.
From 2
How
high
you do
schools.
that?
I went to Sidwell Friends in the morning, and I went to Duke Ellington School of the Arts in the afternoon.
Wow.
And
There
was only 2 or 3 people that were allowed to do it, and at the end of my reign of doing, they were like, no more.
Wow, that's cool. So what was it like when you were coming up now, did you come up in D.C. or you said in Potomac?
I grew up in Potomac. I hated Potomac. Couldn't stand it. And so Sidwell was in Washington, D.C. My mother worked in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
So I was constantly back and forth. My church was in D.C. I was at Plymouth Congregational Church. Ellington was in D.C.
Yeah.
Nothing was in Maryland for me.
So you like D.C.?
Yeah, so I was a
What'd you like
DC
about
girl.
D.C.?
Oh, gosh.
Was it the Chocolate City when you was coming up?
It was definitely Chocolate City.
Yeah.
U Street was crack.
Yeah. I got here in '87 to go to Howard, and that's the first thing I noticed when I would take the Amtrak from Philly. I was like, wow, these black folks.
There's a lot of blacks. Like it was.
I don't know if it's like that now, but it was noticeably apparent to me that, well, these black folk.
There was a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
There was a lot of black people. There was a lot of school shootings. You know, we just recently had a school shooting.
Wow.
But there was a lot.
Yeah,
Nobody reported on it because it was primarily in the black community.
Yeah. With that time, I think DC was called the murder capital.
It was the murder capital of the U.S. just because of per capita.
Yeah.
DC's a small city.
Yeah.
It really has under 1 million people in it. It's not like New York. It's
Yeah.
you know, not even like Atlanta.
Yeah.
And there was like Ellington had a lot of bomb threats.
Wow.
And but you know, it was vibrant.
Yeah.
And there was just a lot going on.
Yeah.
I loved the house music scene of DC.
Yeah.
I loved the jazz music scene of DC.
Were you into go-go?
I loved go-go.
Uh-huh.
I was the kid that was the good kid every day.
Uh-huh.
And I went to the place called the Black Hole.
Oh wow! Okay,
And the
I heard about that.
the Black Hole was where your parents said you're not allowed to go. And I went.
Wow.
And the Black Hole was on Georgia Avenue, not far from where Petworth is right now, and the Petworth Metro Station. And you would go, and it was dank.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
the music was hot.
yeah.
It was
Wow.
nice.
You know, I was in DC for about 20 years before I even checked out go-go. I mean, I just didn't. You know, I was just into this jazz thing. And,
Go-go is, in my opinion, the most African of the black musics in America.
I would agree with that. I did a tour, African tour in 95, 96. And we went to Nigeria, Lagos. And I sat in with Fela Kuti.
Ooh.
And I tell people this, me and Vince Evans. And I mean, it was just, when I connect with go-go, because I got to also play with Chuck Brown. And when I played with Chuck, it was the interaction between the audience and the band. It was that synergy right there was like, it just reminded me of just, oh man, this is what go-go was, what I was hearing when I was in Nigeria. It was heavy.
Well, it's language. Like, as I've been studying recently, you know, the drum for people of West African descent, of which most Americans who are black are, is a language instrument. The language matched the drum.
Yeah.
And the drum matched the language. And so there's these multiple things that are happening and different drums doing different things. With American jazz, we codified the drum into one instrument. We codified many drums into one instrument. And because our drums in North America were taken away from us, we had to figure other things out. But with go-go is like, it's almost like Cuban music. It's like Brazilian samba.
Yeah.
It's multiple drums.
Yeah.
Timbales.
I interviewed Bruce Williams about a week or so ago. He was connecting it to the New Orleans, that groove in New Orleans, the beat and go-go to that New Orleans kind of, you know,
Well, you know that, who was I talking to? I can't remember. The drummer. Oh, I can't remember. But, you know, he was talking about how he was listening, you know, this is my Philly roots also. They were listening to Grover Washington.
Oh, that's my dude right there. Exactly. Mr. Magic.
And that's where they started doing that.
Yeah.
And they started putting the drums to that.
No doubt.
And then you had the horns, because, you know, it's like that's still the land of the horn band in the 60s and the 70s.
Look at you gonna be a teacher. So, do you come from a musical family?
I do. I
Wow.
do. I come from actually a medical musical family. So my father, both my parents are doctors. My father graduated from Amherst in arranging and composition, and he was a pianist, and a saxophonist, who was pre-med.
Wow.
And so, you know, my cousin, Anna Laney, was a singer who chose not to go on the road with with Billy Eckstine.
Wow.
She chose not to do it. She had a child, and she just chose not to.
Wow.
And so I grew up listening to music every single night. Mm-hmm. My father changed the house, or he didn't change it. He made the house into a club.
Wow.
So he had, these. I tell the story in my Echoes of an Era show. Mm-hmm. And he had those big stereo cabinets, mm-hmm. and those big Macintosh speakers. Yeah. And he sat in his chair and he drank, and he listened to music really, really loud. So I heard all this music growing up.
Wow.
And and my mother, though she is not a musician in mm-hmm. any way, she's a physician as well. She was just very passionate about, she could tell these Brer Rabbit stories, and she's very, very theatrical mm-hmm, mm-hmm. in the way she speaks. Mm-hmm. And she loved playing music, and she was really, she'll tell you herself, she really wasn't good at it. But she played piano for the church, and she loved to dance. She said, I'm not good at this, but I love dancing. Mm-hmm. And she was in school at the same time with Roberta Flack.
Okay.
And she was in Roberta Flack's choir. And she will commonly say, I was in a choir and I loved singing, and Roberta told me, Mary Alice, you just be a little quiet.
Wow. So you have any siblings?
I do. Mm-hmm. My brother is a musician also. Okay. He's a guitarist. He was my manager and producer.
Wow.
For many, many years. And I have a half sister. She used to play cello and piano. My brother played for Kool and the Gang, and my brother was
really
yes, he did.
Oh God.
My brother toured a lot, and he was a manager for Ivana Santilli. He was mm-hmm. a manager for the group Heavy. Wow. That's Casey Benjamin and the people that were, the people that are out in neo soul and certain jazz. Those were all people in my band.
Oh wow, that's what's up. See, I'm learning things. I'm like, wow. Yeah. So did music come easy for you? I know you're hard working.
It did come relatively easily. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel like it did mm-hmm. because I was trying, but I look back now, I'm like, yeah, it was relatively easy. But it was easy more because I was surrounded by it.
Yeah. Do you have perfect pitch?
I do not.
Okay.
I have very good relative pitch.
Mm-hmm. So what was your first instrument?
Piano.
Piano was your first instrument?
It's my first instrument.
Do you still play?
I still play. I'm not a great pianist. I can get by.
Okay. So did you study formally?
I did. I studied for 12 years. I studied classical piano.
Okay.
And I was pretty good at it, but I realized that around 12 or 13, I'm like, I'm gonna be a musician. Something just said, this is what I'm gonna do. But this practice thing to be a pianist, that's 8 hours a day, man, for years.
Yeah. So when did you start singing?
I started singing, I think, in 3rd grade.
Okay.
I auditioned for something. Mm-hmm. And my mother's like, well, why didn't you just play? I'm like, well, I don't want to. I want to sing. So I sang something. And then I was in the Howard University Children's Theater. Mm-hmm. And that was more centered on musical theater and singing. Mm. And so I started singing with that. And I had a really big voice that was pretty loud.
Now, were you born with a voice, or were you trained to sing?
I guess both. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that I was born. I don't know how, but I liked to sing, and people said I was good, but. Yeah.
Because you have a pretty extensive range.
Well, I learned.
Is that from training?
That's from training.
Okay.
I mean, I learned I went to Ellington, and the
Okay.
reason I went to Ellington for voice, they were like, well, why don't you go for piano? Because I was a good pianist. I was playing real stuff. And I was like, I could get into Ellington easy. I mean, I could dance. I had taken dance. I was a good artist. I could draw. I had been in theater. You know, it was like, I want to get into this school. What's the easiest way for me to get in? And so I could sing. I'm like, let me do that.
Wow.
And so I started singing, and I started studying with Edward Jackson.
Wow. So you develop a passion for singing.
I did.
And it overshadowed whatever you don't know.
It did.
Wow.
And the thing is that I was not, when I went to Ellington, I was not the best singer there. By a long shot.
Wow.
Not by a long shot. I was there when Roz White was there. I was there. I was there when Mark Carey, piano player, was there. I was a senior when Dave Chappelle was a freshman.
Oh, yeah, really?
Yes.
Wow.
That's why I didn't.
So you
sing.
remember him as a freshman?
Don't.
Okay.
I don't.
Okay.
Because I was there in the afternoon, so
Gotcha.
I wasn't there when
that's right.
everybody else was going to class. Michelle Ngochella was there right before I was there.
Okay.
Lamont Rucker was there. There was a whole bunch of singers. And we were studying classical music. And I was a belter. And there was nobody teaching that stuff at that time.
Wow. Yeah.
And I didn't know how to do any of this stuff, but I was a pianist. So I could play all that material. So that's how I practiced. I would play all that material. And then, and so I would sing it, and I knew when those high notes were coming, and I can't do that, I can't do it. And I get really, really scared. And so all of these other people could sing these things, and they could sing high, and they could belt higher than I could. I had a deeper voice, and as I started teaching more and learning more, you know, the bigger voices take a lot longer to mature.
Wow.
The lighter voices mature earlier.
Okay. Wow.
It's like, it just, and I was small.
You have to grow into your voice.
You literally have to grow into your voice.
Yeah.
And I was like this big. I was literally 92 pounds.
Wow.
And, you know, you literally can't carry the physicality. I was reading something about Beyonce and how, like, and when she was younger, you know, she was thinner when she was younger, and she just couldn't carry some of the weight of her voice.
Yeah.
You hear her now, and she's, you know, you can hear the growth and the maturity. She's a bigger woman.
Yeah.
You know,
that makes a difference, huh?
It makes it. There's musculature.
Wow.
And things that you have to do in order to be able to do these things.
So can someone learn how to sing?
Yes.
Everyone, if you have a voice, you can learn how to sing.
If you have a voice, you can learn how to sing. Some people might take a longer time.
Okay.
I have students who have difficulties with pitch, but I have students that have difficulty with pitch who have lovely voices. I have people who have, you know, it's a tough thing, but if they practice at it, they get better.
What about range? I can't get them. You know, I can do Wonderful World, but how do you extend your range?
Well, the thing is, when you do that, there's physicality that's associated with singing. People think that you just open your mouth and sound comes out. But the what you have to do, it's your whole body that is actually doing the work. So the larynx is about the size of a dime.
Okay.
And a man's larynx is maybe the size of a larger, like a nickel. A woman's larynx is a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
And so that's why men have deeper voices because the vocal folds are literally larger.
Okay.
And so think about a piano strings.
Gotcha.
So the deeper lower notes are longer and fatter.
Okay.
And the smaller higher notes are short and thinner.
Okay.
And that's the same. And so taking a good breath, building the muscles in your upper abdominals and your upper thighs, your psoas muscles, your upper back muscles, your glutes.
Wow.
You use all of these muscles.
So are you physically, like, when you perform, is it physically draining?
Yes, it is.
Wow. I'm going to stick to the saxophone.
Well, that's your body is your instrument. So, like, for example, that's why you see singers, you know, you have to kind of, after the end of the show, sometimes singers will shut up.
Yeah.
Before, if you're on the road a lot, you're not talking a huge amount, but you have to do a whole lot of, if you're on the road and you have to do interviews, you're on a plane, you're constantly eating a certain way, you know, all of these things impact what it is that you have to do. And so, I was watching a YouTube video that talked about some of this stuff and how you see a lot of modern singers that they're on the road and they just can't handle it after a while.
Wow.
Because they weren't prepared.
Yeah.
This is, to get up, when you play horn, you can play horn all day, but you might get tired. You have good breath support because you're using your upper abdominals to support breath, and you've got a reed in order to do things. But you get tired, your fingers get tired, you're done. You can do it the next day and the next day and the next day.
Yeah.
A singer, to do, like musical theater people, they are the factory workers of singers. To do musical theater 8 shows a week, your body got to be in excellent shape. Your voice has to be in excellent shape.
And then as you get older, it's like, I was playing last night, and I was soloing, man. I said, oh, man, I got to get back in that gym.
You do. Like gospel singers, I remember I was talking on somebody's Facebook, somebody's like our vocalists, our jazz musicians, athletes. And I said, well, jazz singers, no. But gospel singers really are.
Okay.
Classical singers are. Musical theater singers are. And some jazz singers are. Because you can sing jazz just like this if you really want.
Yeah.
Shirley Holmes. Da, da, da.
Yeah.
Isn't it a pity?
Yeah.
We never.
Less stress the best.
You could just talk your way through.
Yeah.
But if you're doing stuff like Nancy Wilson or Dinah Washington, Ella.
Yeah.
Ella was belting F's at 65.
Ooh.
I was just listening to Dionne Warwick.
Oh,
Dionne Warwick was like, I was listening to her, and I did a gig the other night at Westminster. I was just listening. I was like, oh, so that's how she does it. So I was listening to Dionne, and I grew up listening to Dionne, but I hadn't really thought about it because I was listening to Shaka, and I was like, I can't do that. But Dionne, I could do that.
Yeah.
And so I was doing some of that technical stuff that she was doing. I'm like, oh, so that's how she does it. So I was doing that at the gig. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So what was your work ethic like? You mentioned that you wasn't at Duke Ellington. You wasn't like the best top singer, right?
But I had a stronger work ethic than a lot of people.
Wow.
Because I come from a work ethic. My mother was a farmer. And so she was her father was a tobacco farmer.
Wow.
And so she grew up picking tobacco.
Wow.
And stringing tobacco and all that other stuff. And so, but she was actually the cook.
Yeah.
So she would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, and make breakfast for all the farm hands.
Wow.
And then she would take it out and she would drive truck at 9.
Wow.
And she would take it out.
And you saw this coming up?
I saw her work ethic.
Yeah.
And she would tell me that, she never felt that she was the brightest, but she would go to Howard University and she would study from 7 to 11. Don't call her, don't talk to her, don't do nothing for them 4 hours. And people were like, well, how are you doing? And that's how she did it. So I didn't know that you didn't work.
Wow. Yeah.
I wasn't, one of the things that coming up in the black middle class is that...
You from the middle class?
Yes. I am.
I thought you was from the hood.
No, I'm not. I am not. I wanted to be sometimes, but but it's like, but I'm not. And the thing is that, when you come from that black middle class, that black excellence, you are not given the option of failure.
Yeah.
Failure?
Yeah. Yeah.
You mean like a C is failure?
Yeah. It's funny. I'm from the hood, but my mother did not allow me to get a C.
And see, that's I look now. It's like we a little different.
Yeah, a little different.
We a little different because it wasn't about class structure.
Yeah.
If you were from a strong
value system, it was about value system.
Yeah. There was no you can't do this.
Yeah.
I was sent to school. I had a fever, I think, of 101.
Wow.
And I had a test. My mother said, "Well, you have to take that test." But my mama's sick. She said, "So?"
Wow.
and I went and I took the test. She just was like, "Why are you here?"
Wow.
Because my mother said that I have to take this test. And so at Ellington, though I wasn't the most talented, I already had a work ethic of practicing because of piano.
Gotcha.
A lot of people who came to Ellington had never practiced before, never really understood that. And Ellington was their first experience in practice.
Wow.
And I had been used to, I sucked at it. I still am a sucky practicer. But I understand practice. I understood that, okay, you have to break this down and there's things that you have to do. So I could go and I knew, okay, I'm learning this new stuff. And so I had to learn how to do it.
Wow.
And I knew that, okay, if I'm learning Cade Selve, I had to learn Italian.
Wow.
I had to figure out how that went. I had to learn German. I had to learn French.
Wow.
You had to learn these things. I had to break down, because I knew how to break down things from playing piano.
Yeah.
I had to learn and I had to practice these exercises. And I was singing in a completely different way. And I had to figure out how this stuff went. And I sounded like crap while I was doing it. Because when you learn something for the first time, you don't do well.
Yeah.
That is common. That is how it works.
You pay them dues.
You pay the dues. And I was very fortunate because I went to church. And one of the beautiful things about church, whether it be a white church or a black church, but most definitely just church in general, the black church, they gonna have you sing.
So you sang.
So I sang in church. So I was my choir director was a classical singer.
Wow.
And so we were singing gospel, but we were singing it from a classical perspective. And my church, Plymouth Congregational Church, it spawned the black classical singers of Washington, D.C. So Dietrich Battle and Deborah, and these classical singers that you see on the stage today. Stephen Herring is what went to my church, and he is a major classical singer.
Well, I was married to a classical singer, excellent classical singer, and so I used to hear her singing around the house and all the. And she mentioned those names, Dietrich Battle.
Yes, all those people. Yes.
You might know her. You know Michelle Fallon.
I don't.
Okay, yeah, but she's known in the area. But yeah, so she would mention some of them names that you mentioned. So I'm very familiar.
So it's like
Leontine Price.
Oh yes,
yeah,
And so the thing is, when you see, like, I was studying Leontine Price for a while, and then you hear her sing "Ride On King Jesus," and she's like, "Ride on King Jesus, ride on, no man." I'm like, what? Wait a second.
Yeah.
So it's like, so black people, like, this is the thing that's wonderful about the black culture, is that, we had all of it. Yeah. All of it was sung or done by all of us. Yeah. So if you were singing gospel, there's classical people in gospel. Richard Smallwood, you know, he was studying Bach.
Yeah.
And you could hear it in his music.
Yeah.
And you could hear it in his singers. And you could, and so
all,
you it's all connected in the Black community. So not only was the blues there, and not only was R&B, you know, the gospel and we all sang it.
Yeah.
So I was singing classical music and gospel in my church.
Wow.
And my mother was like, I really don't like it when you sing that high stuff. It doesn't sound right. But, you know, I learned how to do it. And she was like, well, you know, that's what you're going to do. And we're going to learn how to do this. And looking back now, you know, I didn't learn the things that I needed to learn how to do what it is that I actually ended up doing, which was jazz and R&B. And I had to learn that 20 years later. Yeah. And I'm able to learn how to do it more now.
Wow.
Probably better than I was able to do it back then.
So who were some of your early influences? Like who would you say, like, if you ask me, who, Bird, Grover Washington. That was my initial influence. And then, you know, I eventually got to train and all the other cats, Kenny Garrett and all. So, but who was those artists for you?
They were the people that were played in my house.
Okay.
So that.
Any vocalists like that would stand out to you?
Shaka Khan.
Shaka Khan.
Nancy Wilson. Those are the people. Michael Jackson.
Okay.
Maurice White. Philip Bailey. Stevie Wonder.
Wow.
Dionne Warwick. Those are the people that my father listened to. Lionel Richie. Lou Rawls.
Okay.
Then I started branching out on my own because I didn't understand the concept of radio. Because music was always played in my house.
Oh, wow. That's deep.
I didn't understand what radio. You mean
wow,
what?
That's crazy.
I didn't understand.
You had the radio at your crib.
Yeah, there was no playing of radio.
Yeah. Oh, wow, that's heavy.
There was no playing of radio.
Wow.
We didn't understand that concept because records were played.
Wow.
That's it.
That's
so
heavy.
It was wild. So when I started listening to the radio, I was like, oh, there's radio. So then I started listening. I love Diane Reeves. Like I could listen to Diane Reeves.
Yeah.
It's like, especially as a classical singer, finally I could understand how to sing low and high. And then Sarah Vaughan was, I could sing low and classically kind of. Yeah. Oh, I could sing like this. Yeah. This is amazing. And then of course, I listened to Prince because,
you took something from everybody.
I'm a musician.
Yeah, gotcha.
So like, I don't think of myself just as a singer. I'm a musician.
But which style were you chasing? Like, were you trying to, I
just like to sing.
Okay.
But I really did want to be a jazz singer. I like that.
As a young person?
Yes, I liked that. But jazz didn't want to do what I wanted to do with it. I wanted to scat. I wanted to do stuff.
Wow.
And so I learned, and nobody was teaching it. But at Ellington, what happened was I was listening and I was playing, and Mark Carey would help me figure stuff out. And I was like, I can't figure this out. He's like, oh, it's this 2/5 or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
And so Davey Yarborough saw me. He was like, oh, so you're going to play in my jazz band. So I was the first singer in his jazz jazz band. But Edward Jackson was like, no. She is a singer. She will not be in your jazz band. Or she will not do that because I need her.
Wow.
And so I was singing alto. He was like, you really should be singing soprano, but you can read, so you shall be here. and so it was that, and then Sam Bonds had me in the show choir.
Okay.
So I was singing more musical theater and jazzy kinds of things there, and more R&B things there. So, I remember Dionne Warwick coming to the school.
Wow.
And we were singing That's What Friends Are For. And so it was like, so I sang, I grew up with a lot of stuff. So I sang a lot of stuff.
What's for us who don't sing? Is there a difference between a singer and a vocalist? Is those titles just thrown together?
I make them different. For in terms of a vocalist, I ascribe a vocalist being a little bit more professional.
Okay.
Somebody who has studied. And a singer is someone who sings.
Okay. Good. That clears it. That clears it for me. Okay, so you mentioned that you wanted to sing jazz. Your dad was playing straight ahead jazz as well.
He was playing straight ahead jazz as well. So I mean,
and when you first heard jazz, you liked it?
I liked it. I mean, what at 3? What are you gonna do?
Which I did a panel the other day, and I was telling, I think Willard Jenkins was on it, Munir, and Rusty Hassan. We were at Howard.
That was a nice one.
Yeah, and so I said, and I'm an educator like yourself, and I said, you know how they had these little jazz in the schools? Like, when I heard jazz, it wasn't like I wasn't coerced to appreciating jazz. It's like I heard it, and I was like, wow.
It's great.
Yeah, a lot of times when they do these jazz in the school programs, they try and explain what call and response is, the blues, and I get all that. That's good stuff. But I always thought that we should just let them experience.
Let them sing it.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I used to do when I was teaching preschool.
Yeah.
I would do all sorts of things, but I would just play some Miles Davis. I would play all blues.
Yeah.
And there were lyrics to it.
Yeah.
And I'd put little things to it and do this whole thing. And I could explain all that.
Yeah.
But the more important thing was when we danced to it.
Yeah.
And we'd sing it.
But I was talking about actually bringing, like when artists come to the school, like let's say Roy Hargrove, and just hit at the highest level. Don't start explaining. Just do a concert. Let them experience, because jazz, you hear it. It's oral, but you also got to see it. And so, and that's why, especially in the hood where I teach, I think our kids need to come and see jazz, because you start seeing how people respond to different. When they say yeah, and so.
We have to remember that jazz ceased to be a part of the day-to-day Black life culture. And I say this, Black people, all Black people throughout the diaspora, we like to drop it like it's hot. We just, if we can't dance to it, we really don't care.
Yeah.
And jazz became a concertized music. And Black people, we love to go and see music, but more importantly, dancing is a part of our feeling. And as we less dance to it, it became less a part of our culture, of our day-to-day culture.
I know what you're saying. I don't know what it, maybe I'm not connected to the dance, but when I heard Charlie Parker, which is,
he's an R&B cat.
Well, what I heard was his sound. Like it wasn't even like about rhythm for me, because them records, the drummer was just keeping time, but it was just the sheer emotional impact of his music. And like, I do think like we are, dropping like, but I do think we are also intellectuals.
Just because we drop it like it's hot has nothing to do with lack of intellectual or interest in sound.
Yeah.
Like it's a mixture.
Yeah.
It's a mixture.
I think there's an imbalance in today, because our kids think just music is just to be danced to. And it is to be danced to. But music serves, I mean, you don't dance, I mean, well, I guess they dance to gospel music.
They do. It's always a praise and worship with us. It's always a praise and worship.
But I try to tell kids, but for example, I tell kids, when you go to a movie, there's music playing in the background. When you go to see Disney, whatever, there's music in the background that adds to the ambiance of what's on the screen. And so I just try to get people to just their aesthetic value. I just try to expand that so that we're not just one dimensional. You know what I'm saying? And therefore not appreciating all of our culture?
Well, that's the thing. We're very, very accustomed to creating, but not necessarily sustaining.
Yeah.
And that is something that we, as a people, have to kind of learn how to do, because we have an outsized stamp
Yeah.
on world music.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, for our, you know, and it's Black Americans.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have an outsized stamp on music, of world music culture.
Yeah.
So everybody's coming to study what it is that we do.
Yeah.
And we don't necessarily study what makes us great.
Yeah.
You know. And so
it's really interesting. I mean, coming up like I'm in the hood, I saw all this greatness in people. I mean, this guy can dance. This cat was funny. This cat just had the gift of gab. He was cool. He knew how to talk to the ladies. It was all these different, like, great aspects of the whole thing. And I was able to see the greatness in it. A lot of times I don't know, take it for granted, but they could not take that greatness and turn it into, and that's all, is take whatever that greatness that you have and turn it into success. You know.
Well, there's some societal stuff that goes with that, but like this is a thing that I've started to figure out, like in teaching voice, and teaching jazz voice, and when I watch people do it, and we forget about rhythm, and I think it's honestly because we just do it naturally.
Yeah.
So we don't think about it. What you don't think about, I'm going to drink this water. You don't think about it's water. You don't think about how the water is created and the amazing thing that happened. It's water.
Yeah.
You know, you drink it and it's great. But so we don't think about how rhythm has impacted everything about how we do stuff. And this amazing rhythmic emotional way of creating things, we just think about, well, you know, you just do it.
You just like dancing.
And that's that's what it is. We forget.
Yeah. I wish I would have learned jazz that way, because I learned jazz by thinking.
Yes, and it's
and I wish I learned it back. And it's the hardest thing to do is to unlearn something.
Well, that's the thing. The reason that I think that I am the way that I am is because, as frustrating as it was, like I couldn't hear, I couldn't think, it was difficult growing up in a bath of music.
Yeah.
But I was in a bath of music, so I was hearing very complex stuff. Maurice White did some. May I curse on this thing?
Yes, you can.
Maurice White was doing some shit.
Oh, yes.
Oh my God! When you look back at like the songwriting chops and the arranging, pop, 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 pop. I mean, what?
Yeah.
What? And the different stuff that's going on when you break down what Stevie Wonder was doing.
Oof.
And I remember I was just playing on the piano as a kid, and my father would come down and he would look. He was like, "Do you know what you're playing?" I'm like, "No." So I was just like, I was playing like a C, a C and a G, maybe a C and a B flat, and then I would just put a B flat chord on top of it.
Wow.
And I would just play, and I would play around like that. And he'd be like, "Holy shit, do you know what you're doing?" I'm like, "No, I have no clue."
You know what I think? What happens is that, you know, Black Americans, some of us are able to overcome the social whatevers. I think, and I saw this in hip hop, because we came up in a time when hip hop started.
Yes, we did.
And the beautiful thing about hip hop, and it probably as well as jazz, is that we validated ourselves before the world took it and turned it into whatever it is now. We were not afraid to. We did this in a community. We did this, and it became really deep. And I tell African American, when you start validating yourself, like, you don't need permission to do what you want to do.
What you do. Like,
yeah.
I don't know if this story is true or not. I have no clue. But somebody told me somewhere that Charlie Parker was like, "Look, these white people think that they can play this. Let me play something that you think you can play this. And I'm gonna play what I hear. I'm gonna play what I can do, and I'm gonna take these beautiful melodies and play them faster than you've ever heard before in your life. I'm a Cannonball Adderley girl, so I like that sauce. I like that sauce.
Well, see, I think like when you look at Canada's like a country kind of boy.
I know.
And like in a country,
But
you have family and you get love. Like that comes out in his music. Bird, I think, his music, I can hear the pain in his, because before he was Charlie Parker, in stories about them throwing a cymbal, laughing at him and throwing a cymbal, and he went away and he locked himself into the shed and came back. And he was Charlie Parker. And so, but in our community, a lot of times, and I see this as a teacher with young, we always are downing each other. And so your confidence, we have to fight to have confidence, and it can come from your parents. It can come from the people in the neighborhood, come from people in school. And so we have that low self-esteem prevents us from tapping into and validating out the greatness within. And so, and I had to fight that because, and I said, you know what? I was just stubborn enough and crazy enough not to I don't care what nobody say, I'm going to do this.
I mean, I still fight it.
Yeah.
I still have the issues of, I didn't do this well enough. I didn't get this well enough. Or, my struggle for me was being myself. And being myself in a land at a time where being me was not necessarily what people wanted.
Wow.
A lot of artists talk about that.
Yeah. Well, plus you were in two worlds. See, you got the hood blacks, and then like you said, the upper class blacks, and so that's them two. We don't talk about it.
We don't talk about it, and I didn't like this. I didn't like the upper class blacks.
I
didn't like them.
And then sometimes they can start thinking, oh, you think you, because I don't know if you got that.
I got that. I got the Oreo.
Yeah.
I got that because I spoke proper English. So I had to learn, as we codify it now.
Yeah.
Because back then nobody really thought about it, or we didn't laud how great we were by being bilingual. We didn't understand that we had our own, they call it African American vernacular now. And we were downed when we called it Ebonics.
Yeah.
We were told that, that's just broken English. No, it's not. And if you look at how Yoruba language is, we're doing these African languages and we transferred it into English because all of these African people had to come from very separate different things, separate cultures, and come together and learn how to speak one tongue.
Yeah.
Because we had to survive. And we created that tongue, and it is a Creole language that we use. But we also had to learn how to speak in order to get by, because language in Britain is incredibly important.
Yeah.
So if the King's English, you had to know that was a class structure. So we're not stupid. We learned the King's English in order to be able to survive, because people who were speaking Cockney and all that other stuff, they weren't making no money neither.
But the irony to this is that hip-hop turned that dialect, the communication of that, into a thing that now they want to come. And you got the Europeans.
Half my business is white people coming to me to learn how to do this music.
But I think that's the beauty of cultures sharing.
But that is the thing is, now we've been talking about appropriation, and a lot of that I think is because of money, of what happened in the past. Music has always gone back and forth, and we learn stuff and we do stuff with each other, and I take a portion of this. There's always been theft in music. That's how we create different musics.
Yeah.
But what has been upsetting, and And what's made us frustrated is the money aspect. Not, Bill Evans was a great ass piano player.
Yeah.
He was magnificent. Amy Winehouse can sing her ass off before she died. She's a great singer, But what frustrates Black people is that we are not able to attain the same financial level off of the music that we create. That has been the frustration, and that has really been our anger point.
Yeah, I could see that. I attribute some of that frustration to trying to fit in somebody else's narrative. Like, a lot of us, like, for example, you had Diana Ross and the Supremes, and then Diane said, "Oh, this is Diana Ross," or you had James Brown, and he had his, and so everybody's fighting, in this system to get on.
Well, Diana Ross, like everybody was saying that Mary Wilson, quote unquote, had the better voice. Now, Mary Wilson had a more bluesy voice, and Berry Gordy wanted to hit the pop market. Diana Ross had a smoother voice, had a lighter voice that fit the market at the time.
Yeah.
So he put her up.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Yeah. But I mean, it's happened with Lionel Richie.
That's what
Teddy
happened.
Pendergrass.
Yes.
So
the market.
But I do believe, I think we messed up, and we talked about this on Facebook, is when we used to have a Black community, we used to have a Black union, and we wanted to, I guess, be a part of, we had Negro leagues, we wanted to be a part of the major leagues. So we gave up the control of our own culture so that we can get up in somebody else's. So our frustration, we have to take some blame. This is my thoughts.
I hear what you're saying. So here's the thing. What Martin Luther King was fighting for was not to necessarily integrate, but to be able to go where you wanted to go, and to not be persecuted, and to do that. But one of the things that happens now, so there's a writer, a couple who decided to buy black for an entire year. Just to say that the dollar was not going in our communities over and over again. And I grew up with this aesthetic in my house. There were no pictures of white people in my house. I grew up in Potomac, Maryland. We were the second Black family to move in. There were no white people pictures in my house. There were pictures. There was a picture of Joe Frazier beating on Ollie and Ollie down. My father took that picture. And a picture of Benjamin Banneker. And there was a picture that my father took. He was a photographer also in his spare time, of some Japanese women at the Cherry Blossom Festival. But all of our pictures, all the people that we worked with, Did your parents do that intentionally? Intentionally. My mother said, as a Black doctor, most of the people that came to her were Black. You got to support Black people. So it's like, we grew up with that. But if you do that now and you say that now, you are called a racist. You are called, you're discriminating against white people. Wait a second. So you tell us that we're supposed to raise ourselves up and do things for ourselves. But then when we do that, you tell us that we're racist for doing that. Yeah. And so then when we say, you want to build a highway, but you choose to build it through our communities. And when we say you need to rectify that, well, that's how is a highway racist? Well, wait. So it feels like, well, bring yourself up. I'm bringing myself. Bring yourself up. Bring yourself up. Bring it. And so why are you beating on me as I'm trying to bring myself up? And so there's these two different things.
So let me push back on some of that.
Okay, cool.
Okay. There was a time when that I understand that need for black identity and validate, to see I'm black and I'm proud, I'm saying that loud. Okay. Now, at a certain point, are you defined by your blackness or are you defined by who you are
as a human?
As Alison.
Yes. And I agree with you.
Uh-huh.
That was one of the things that jazz musicians who went to Europe did. They wanted to be a man, a woman. They didn't want to be black. They wanted to be a musician and wanted to be lauded. And right now that we have more of the legal and economic things that we chose, that we fought for, it's difficult to get out of the victim mentality while still bringing up the stuff that needs to be brought up.
Yeah.
It's a hard one, and we're
and the I can't. Let me try to put phrases so I don't get in trouble.
I get in trouble all the time. I get in trouble all the time. You know how you know how we do.
Well, just teaching in the inner city, there's a new black dynamic that was different than when I came up. Meaning that my value system and the things that I was taught as a black, just value system is different than what I'm seeing in our community. And so now when we say black, are we all in the same pot? Because it's like, when you shoot your brother or when you call your sister out of her name, to me, that ain't what it is about, and then, being a music teacher, I'm bringing jazz, black music. They don't want.
They don't want to get it.
They put their finger, and so it's like something is missing. The connection is missing, and I understand how Dr. King and what he fought for, and how we got to this point. And the sad thing is that you would think that after the civil rights that we and some of us as individuals have benefited, and I myself included. But from I got kids that, as I'm a teacher, and they cussing me out in elementary school.
Trust me, I did it, and I got tired because I remember creating a whole record for one young woman because I was like, this woman is real. This young girl is really talented.
Yeah. And
she's going to need more.
Wow.
And but she didn't necessarily appreciate what I was that I was doing. Wow. But some of the other kids did. We are allowing a few children in our public school system to control the narrative for 75% of our kids. And because we have, this is a whole nother thing. Education does not cure poverty. Education does not cure, we have to figure out.
The integration piece, that now they what I call it, they centralize education, no child left behind. So everybody got to learn the same thing. Before we had more control over what we taught our kids.
Well, this is the thing. It's like, so one, you've got parents who are under a lot of stress. And, I might get messed up for this, but, when my mommy's a stripper, it's difficult. It's difficult to know, and not to down that person, but if that's how she got to make money, it's difficult to figure these things out. And then you've got there's more stuff than we in this conversation, and that frankly that we are really dealing with.
Yeah, the problem is definitely deeply entrenched.
It's a deeply entrenched situation.
I just think I don't know the remedy I don't know if the remedy that worked for the civil rights, what they would fight, is the remedy that's going to fix what
There's a respect issue that I don't know if it's because Black people still go to church. Black people still, we have jobs, we do things, we I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
And but I do know that I am trying to bring jazz back to our children.
That's what the remedy is. It's like not. I'm doing this show not because I went to. I don't speak the King's English the best. Nobody told. I pay for it. I try to compensate people. Because I want to do it. Simply because I and I'm not trying. And I ain't even.
But that's the point. It's that individuals in our community leave the community and don't necessarily come back to the community to show what it's supposed to look like. Yeah. So in the past, we were all together and people moved up and you could see it and what was happening. Yeah. And so there was a model. Yeah. So you are a model. Even it's as difficult as it is where you are, what does Black manhood look like? What does Black womanhood look like? And so it's difficult when we are fighting against visuals that don't always model what we want to model, but there are no options. They don't feel like there are options for them because they don't know what it's supposed to look like. It's hard to become what you don't know that you can accomplish. They see people, they saw Diddy get it, but they don't know that what Diddy had to do in order to do this, but they also don't know that there is a way to be, that there's other things that you can be that are not entertainment oriented. And you get that one of the things that music teaches you is a work ethic and an ethic of performance teaches you cannot screw up. In terms of you got to bring it. Yeah. Nobody cares about my life when I'm on stage. Yeah. Nobody cares.
Yeah, exactly.
I got to bring it.
Yeah.
And they come and they want to see a show. My job is to do this work and to entertain and educate or however it is that I want to do it at that moment.
Wow.
Period. Well, when you go to a job, your job is to do your job at that moment to the best of your ability. And one of the things about being a teacher is you're essentially performing for 6 to 8 hours.
Yeah.
Period. There is no downtime. And so you learn how to be on for that whole time. And so people...
I haven't learned that yet. I'm still working on it.
But it's like, but the thing is,
no, I got you.
is that these work ethics that you see, that you can take to different places. If you're, if they can, they don't get it in the beginning. What I found is I have a student now who was in my choir in the Bronx. I taught a children's training choir in the Bronx. I was the musical director for 250 kids, and I taught the young kids. And I had a large choir, and I had a chamber choir, and I had to write for all of them. And one of those students, her name is Genesis, and sometimes you can see a billboard of her doing Pantene.
Really? Wow.
Yes. And she's singing on the Motown, the musical review show, and in Atlantic City. And she said to me, I saw your afro, and when I was a kid, and I looked at you and I saw you sing, and I said, I want to be like Miss Crockett.
Wow.
This is what we do.
Yeah, no doubt.
This is what we do.
Yeah.
And she went and she did it.
Yeah.
And
but you went back in.
yes.
You went in the community. Yeah.
As
yeah.
I was a part of the community.
Yeah. Yeah.
So not only was I doing vocal production, and I was, I went to Sweden, I toured all over the place and all this other stuff, I was also, I needed to eat.
Yeah.
So I was also,
yeah.
so I was also working, and I was working with kids who looked like me.
Yeah.
Who was Black and Hispanic children in the Bronx, in the South Bronx.
Wow.
And, so I was working with them, and they had tough lives sometimes.
Wow.
But they had parents who wanted more for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I moved back down to the DC metropolitan area, we have a group of parents sometimes that, because music was taken out of the schools in the 80s, and it was taken out, the DC metropolitan area created some of the strongest musicians
No doubt.
of the planet.
Yeah.
And go-go is heard around the world.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
is lauded around the
doubt.
world, but the U.S. doesn't really know about it so much.
Yeah.
And even Black people outside of D.C. don't really know. They don't remember
Yeah.
that, in D.C. it was go-go, in Philly it was hip-hop. And so there was
neo soul.
But the neo soul came in the 90s.
Yeah.
The 80s it was kind of hip hop, they were battling
Which we got
each
from
other.
New York.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that
Yeah.
was kind of
Yeah.
what was going on.
Yeah. And you've one of the few people that I know, and I guess that has lived in Philly, where I'm from, my hometown, New York, and the Washington D.C. metropolitan area. I just wanted to go. I know you got the Philly through way of Temple. Did you go to
Yes,
Temple?
I went to Temple University.
What made you choose Temple?
It was the only jazz program that had voice.
Wow.
That was it. I didn't want to go to a conservatory because I wanted to be educated.
Wow.
And I was at Syracuse at the time, and I did not want to study classical voice. What happened was that I was studying with, I think her name was Julie Newell, and I was singing Batti Batti, a Mozart aria. And she said, "That's great." And I was singing it, and she said, "Wonderful job. Now put what it is that you were doing in the body of an 18th century white woman."
Wow.
And it wasn't said in any kind of racist manner. It was the job. And she was white, and I loved her. She was a wonderful teacher. And I was like, I'm done. I can't. This is how I sing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean I didn't take it as I had to change myself. I'm like, this is just not what I do. And so I was just looking for something that was jazz. And that was one of the few universities that was closer to home, because I didn't want to be so far away from home.
Yeah.
And Philly was here, so I went to Temple.
Were you hanging out on the scene in Philly?
Yeah.
What was that like
Well,
for you?
I was a part of the scene. That was where I met my ex-husband, Robert Landon, and he was playing, and so I would go out with him, and then I would go out and I would want to sing, and I went to this club called the Blue Note on Lime Kiln Pike, and that's where I met Eddie Green, and that whole Tyrone Brown.
Yeah.
These
You
were
had
my
a stick bass. I
yeah,
remember
with the
Tyrone.
stick, yeah. And I met those people, and I looked at that as a class. Nobody else at Temple did, but
Wow.
I did. I looked at it as a class. It was $3. You could go, and everything that I learned, I took to the jam session.
Wow.
And I learned a song, I took to the jam session. Learned a song, took it to the jam session.
Yeah.
And then so I was singing. I was one of the last singers with Zanzibar Blue.
Wow. Yeah.
When that started, that ended. And so I was singing in Blue Moon, and I was singing with Orrin Evans, and Byron Landon, and Mike Boone, and I was a part of that, and I remember they had a whole group of people that played, and they said, you know, they had, you know, Denise King, and they had jazz singer, you know, they had this person, they had jazz, this person. And next to my name, there was nothing. They didn't know what the hell I was. Because I was singing Anita Baker, and I was singing, you know, straight ahead jazz, and I was scatting. And nobody was really scatting at that time.
Wow.
And I was also singing, deep dark jazz. I was, you know, they were like, you know, so when Oren would move into like 5/8 or whatever and move, I didn't know that I could say, no, you can't do this, stop.
Yeah.
So I just wrote it.
Yeah, wow.
And so I was singing this stuff like the things that they're encouraging young jazz singers to do today, they were not encouraging us to do back then. They wanted us to be in long evening gowns.
Yeah.
And singing. So, you know, Jean Norris, who's now Jean Baylor, you know, we were, and Renee Nova, we were classmates.
Wow.
All at the same time. And so I was singing at the Blue Moon, and I was playing with a guy named Anthony Belfiglio, and they came in, and they said, oh, we're doing this thing where we're having DJs playing jazz, because in England they were putting dance beats to Art Blakey.
Wow.
So they were dancing, the north of England, they were dancing to Art Blakey cuts. And so they were starting to do that in Philadelphia. And so I started doing that. And those people wanted me to scat.
Wow, that's cool.
Those people wanted me to do all that stuff.
Wow.
So that's how I got into, so all of that neo soul stuff, I just didn't smoke weed.
I understand. So you went to New York. Was that when you went to the Manhattan School of Music?
That's when I went to Manhattan School of Music.
Okay, what made you go to Manhattan? Was that a master's program?
Yeah, it was a master's program. I went there because I was like, I need to get to New York. I need to get to New York.
Yeah.
And even though I was starting to tour and do all the other stuff, I'm like, I need to get to New York and I need to do that stuff. And so I was like, the only way that I knew, you know, I come from middle class black people. We are educated. So I'm like, let's get the master's degree. So I went, and so that was, so I was in school with Jason Moran and Eric Harlan and Stephon Harris and Jane Monheit and all them people.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was doing that, and Oren moved up. Everybody from Philly moved up.
Wow.
So, you know, Calvin Jones and, you know, all them people. So I was playing with all those people.
So what was that energy like in New York when you were there?
I was just trying to eat, man.
You were trying to eat?
I was just trying to eat.
I mean, would you go to the sessions and all that?
I did. I didn't do a whole lot. I was married.
Yeah.
And I was very shy.
Oh, okay.
And I was homebody, and
so
I didn't go out as much, and I didn't figure out how to deal with all this stuff. But I would go out and I would play, and my brother was down the street.
Okay.
And so, you know, I was across the street from Dean Street, and so I would go there sometimes, and I missed that. But I hated jam sessions because it was
1,000 people.
It was a session where everybody was playing what is this thing called Love for literally 45 minutes, and I just didn't feel like it.
Gotcha.
And I didn't understand the social hang. I didn't get it.
Gotcha. And how long did you live in New York?
10 years.
Wow. And then you came back to the DMV?
Came back to
what
DMV.
made you come back to the DMV?
I had kids.
Okay.
So what was happening is Robert was touring with Teddy Pendergrass.
Okay.
And the Duke Ellington Orchestra.
Okay.
And I was touring with us. I had just finished touring with us three, and I was touring on my own stuff with On Becoming a Woman.
Okay.
And you know, it was, and I was one of the first people that didn't have a record label touring. Now they do this all the time.
We're going to talk about that too. Yeah.
But you know, I was one of the first people that was doing that. Fertile Ground was doing that. A few other people were doing it, but I had a child, and I had to go to another state in order to get that child watched.
Wow. Yeah.
So I was like, my mama's here. I need to.
So it made sense.
You only have a few options here.
Yeah. And that's probably where I met you. When you
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about you as a performing artist. How would you describe your music? I did my best in the introduction to describe. How would you describe
it? Before I used to call it stadium jazz.
Stadium jazz.
Like like rockers.
Like who?
Rockers. Like
rockers. Okay.
People who'd get up. Like how Jamie Cullum goes out. He's in the stadium. People are like,
yeah.
I like that.
Gotcha.
I'm the one that wants to get people up.
Gotcha.
And so I like a lot of energy. I like to play what I like to play. So I like to play R&B. I like to play dance music. I like to swing.
Gotcha.
I like samba. I like things that hit hard.
Gotcha.
So whatever it is.
Yeah. You describe yourself as a DIY artist. What's a DIY artist?
Do it yourself.
Is that another term for an independent artist?
Yes, I'm an independent artist. Yeah. I make it work.
Did you choose to become an independent artist by choice, or was it out of necessity?
Out of necessity. That's how most of us. But now there's so much more that you could do. But I there's some stuff that I didn't know how to do in terms of the schmooze part. But I was hitting hard.
Yeah.
I was touring. I had the whole thing.
Yeah.
I had the team.
Wow.
It was just that the labels were like, we've got our jazz singer. Because anything that was not singing Mary J. Blige was jazz back then.
Yeah.
Yep. Anything that was not hip hop, anything that wasn't even Tony Braxton was considered kind of jazzy.
Yeah.
So it was like, anything that and they couldn't peg me.
Wow.
Because I could sing house music. So I did a lot of house music, and that kind of, the all that IG culture and all that stuff. I could sing kind of soul music, and they were like, yeah, do a whole record of that. That's not what I do.
Wow.
And so when I switched over after On Becoming a Woman to something more acoustic, people were like, what the hell is that? They didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to do with it.
So what are some of the challenges of being an independent artist?
Money.
Money.
Money. Time. Being a parent and an independent artist is incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
If you see who is doing it, notice most of them are childless.
Yeah, no doubt.
Jaguar Wright and I used to had conversations about that. She, because she had her child, and I brought my child on the road. I that's one of the reasons. I just decided to pimp out DC. John Coltrane did the same thing.
In Philly?
He just tried to stay basically, in the same place. And when I got divorced, I had to figure out how to make this work.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, let's just see what I can do here. And, singing jazz, makes it relatively easy. It's an easier art form to consistently work with in the DC metropolitan area. Singing soul music, that's a lot. It's a lot of arrangements. Jazz people are treated a little nicer than soul people are.
Yeah.
There's a circuit, but it's hard.
So what do you want your audience to take away from your performance?
Joy.
Joy?
Joy.
Wow.
I want them to feel the emotions that I feel. I think of singers as emotion wranglers or musicians as emotion wranglers. And with the words and the sound, I take humans on a journey that they would not ordinarily take, because artists, we are connected to that emotional thing. I remember starting to date, and I'm used to being around men a lot, but musicians, and y'all are connected to your feelings.
Yeah.
Because that's what we do.
Tell me about myself.
No, but you know what I'm saying?
No,
It's like you on the bandstand, it's like you feel that. Oh, you got to feel what things are happening. You got to be able to emote through your instrument.
No doubt.
You got to be able to deal with that.
No doubt.
Regular people don't do that. They come to a performance to live through us and to experience emotions and feelings through us.
Wow.
So that's what I do. Yeah. I'm an emotion wrangler.
No doubt.
And so that's what I want people to get out of what it is that I do.
So we're going to try to speed up, because I know, these got things to do. But I wanted to, you also a songwriter?
I am.
How do you come up with your ideas for songwriting?
I actually need some new inputs lately, because I haven't been writing a lot recently. But what I would do, literally, is I would just put my hand on a piano and be like, bloop, okay, let's move that around. That's nice.
Wow.
Let's add some words to that. Let's figure out how that works. And when I couldn't do that, like, I learned it's house music and tracks and doing some of the R&B stuff that I did that taught me how to really write to anything.
Wow. That's cool.
So, I'd be given a track, and I'd have to create a song off of it.
Okay.
And so I'd have to learn how to, I'm a musician.
Yeah.
I'd have to chunk it out.
Yeah.
And I'd have to make something, because I come from jazz, and you have an A section, a B section, a C, blah, 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 and this is how it works. Or an R&B, you have this, you have a verse, you have a pre-chorus maybe, a bridge, a chorus, blah, 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 and it all comes in certain ways. And so I had to figure that out. A lot of times when you're working with people with tracks, they don't come from that background. So I had to impose what it was that I was doing and make this song work.
Wow.
Because they weren't thinking that way.
Yeah.
And so I had to be like, okay, this is what this is, and this is how. So I learned how to do that on the fly with no piano, and be able to. I would write down little notes, and I could hear. What key we in? Okay, I know basically what we're doing. All right, because I had good relative pitch, I could figure it out. And I would sit in a hotel room, and I would write stuff down, and I would write the things, and I would write the rhythms out.
So did you? In terms of lyrics, do you write from your experiences or from your imagination? Like
both.
Okay.
I write from experiences. I recently just wrote something with a guy from South Africa talking about I'm a grown ass woman. And when I did Mommy What's Depression, when I wrote Gentrification, that was my experience of being a gentrifier and a gentrifyee.
Wow.
In Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn.
Wow.
And when we bought our house, and seeing, and all the voices are me, because I lived next to somebody who was from the Caribbean who placed his speakers facing outwards.
Wow.
And I was one of those people like, I grew up with loud music. Can you turn that down? and but also wanting to be, also understanding the culture and being a part of the community. So it's like songwriting should always come from where you come from and what you imagine.
Wow. I just want to shout out your CDs. On Becoming a Woman. Was that your first one?
That was my first one of my own CDs.
The Return of Diva Blue.
That is right.
That was the
second one. That was the second one.
Okay.
That was a remix record.
Bear.
Bear was my third one. Yeah.
What was that about?
Well, So the cover.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
The cover
Says it all.
says it all. So people asked me on the road, because I would do an encore a lot of times of me playing and singing. And they said, we want to hear more of that.
Wow. Okay.
They wanted me to be stripped down.
Yeah. Okay. There you go.
So the picture.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I decided
Yeah.
to turn my Brooklyn bedroom. I
Yeah.
made it all whited out and the whole thing. And I was like, well, let's be bare.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I learned, I'm a student of Prince. I love
Yeah.
Prince. The double entendre.
Gotcha.
That's what we do all the time.
Gotcha.
And understand the picture.
Yeah.
I understood the marketing.
Mm-hmm.
The picture, you see nothing.
Yeah. I
It's
said,
a
okay.
beautiful picture, but men want to see what's behind
Yeah.
my feet. And people are like, put some clothes on,
Yeah.
put some clothes on. I'm like, you don't see nothing. You just see my shoulders and my knees.
Yeah.
You don't see nothing.
All right. And then, Mommy, what's a depression?
Yes.
How'd you come up with that title?
Oh, gosh. That was... My brother and I would have all of these political conversations. We would watch the Sunday shows, and then we would call each other, and we would debate about what we heard and what was going on. And so I decided, at first it was Nina's daughter. And because Nina Simone would do all these things. And we wanted to bring all of the things that we were... that we did, and the electronica, the straight ahead jazz, the gritty funk, all of it together in one kind of, piece like we would grow up with, like Marlena Shaw and how they did all this stuff, and and we were thinking, we were going through the Depression, we were going through the recession at the time, and as we were making the record. And my daughter was young, and she's like, Mommy, what's depression? Everybody's talking about this. And, it's finally, it was like, yeah, what is, that's, I was like, that's a dumb title. My brother was like, yeah, but that's a good title.
Yes.
It's like.
It's definitely different.
Because the record is about. How do you get through this crap?
Yeah. I listened to that. The record this morning, actually, the whole one. I listened to a couple of them. So, yeah. We have some final questions.
Okay.
All right. What is it like being a mom?
That's a big old final question.
Briefly.
It is a beautiful, wonderful, difficult, get on your damn nerves that you love.
Gotcha.
Experience.
Yes. All right. All right. Anything that you wanted to touch on that we didn't cover? We went down some.
We went down some rabbit hole.
But so if there's anything you good?
I'm good. I mean,
Yeah.
people can follow me. I mean, I hate social media and need it at the same time.
Yeah.
I think it's destroying us, but we need it in order. It's like. I hate this plastic bottle, but it's housing the water that I need to drink.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
So,
before you tell them
sure.
how they can contact you, I want to ask you,
sure.
What's next?
What's next is I'm in the process of putting out my Echoes of an Era record that I recorded live with Thad Wilson, who's the MD and a co-executive producer of that project, and that'll be coming out next year.
Beautiful.
And it is a part of my father's record collection. It's going to be a series. Because I grew up with all of these different things. So people say, well, you want to talk about, or you want to do a tribute record to one artist. I'm like, I contribute to so many.
Yeah.
So many. Yeah. And so this one is...
It's wild because, again, I knew you as a jazz artist. It's been truly enlightening for me, I'm telling you. Last question.
Yes.
How can people contact you? You can look right in the camera.
There you go. Okay. So you can follow me on Facebook at Alison Crockett's artist page. That's the best way to kind of get me there. You can follow me on Instagram with Miss Diva Blue, with no E at the end. And you also can be a part of my educational outreach, which is Generations of Vocal Jazz, and you can join me there on both those Facebook pages and Instagram pages on Generations of Vocal Jazz. And so you can also be a part of my workshops, bring your children to these workshops, and I'm expanding those things as we speak.
Yeah.
So I have a summer program coming up for kids between the ages of 6 and 13 to come online.
Yeah.
So it can be any place.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, that's a question I had to ask you.
Okay.
What is the Generations of Vocal Jazz? Please, I think that's very important.
Well,
Tell
the
the people.
Generations of Vocal Jazz started off as a performance festival. I worked at Fillmore Arts Center and at George Washington University. And I thought that it would be nice to push all of my choirs together. I had decided in the last few years of me teaching that I was going to do an all jazz curriculum.
Wow.
And that's what I did.
Beautiful.
And so I taught all about Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong, and I taught my kids how to scat.
Really?
Yes, I did.
Wow.
And I taught them bossa nova and all sorts of things. And I wanted them to really learn how to swing.
Okay.
And so I also had a jazz choir at George Washington University. I also worked with Wayne Willentz, and he had a choir called Capitol Voices, of which I am working with right now. And so I was like, wouldn't it be fascinating to have an adult senior choir, college students, and elementary students all sing together in the Generations?
Beautiful.
And so I started that, and I did a few years of that. And so I decided, and Harry Schnipper was like, you know how Harry is. that is an organization of which you are the executive director of.
Wow.
That's what you should be doing. I'm like, okay.
Is it a nonprofit organization?
Not quite yet.
Okay, we're working toward that end.
Working towards that. So Harry said, you're going to do that. That's what you're going to do. I'm like,
wow.
Okay. And so I started doing that. And so it has progressed. It started off with online courses for kids and for adults. And of course, because it was during the pandemic. And so probably in the fall, I will start doing more things with schools and some choral programs and just educational programs as well. It's also, I've done a lecture for at the Harriet Tubman Museum talking about jazz, and hopefully I'll be doing that in some other libraries as well.
Wow.
To kind of expose our kids. And my mission, I want all children and all people actually, and the generations older people as well, to know about jazz. But I do want to spend a lot of time with our black children, our black and brown children, to know the beauty and majesty and tradition and legacy of jazz and who these people are. Because I went to a restaurant in North Carolina and they had all these pictures of Miles Davis and Ella Fitzgerald and Nat King Cole. You had Frank Sinatra and Billie Holiday, and none of that music was playing over the loudspeakers.
Wow.
And I sat there, it's like, so we as black people sometimes are pimping out our history, but we don't even know or listen to it. And so we need to start listening to it. And just like you said, your 3-year-old self, just heard it and was like, oh, this is great. I just like it. 3-year-olds listen to it and like, oh, this is great. They don't, it's just music.
Yeah.
And they enjoy it just as much as anybody else.
No doubt.
And so I want us to be able to experience that. I want older people to be able to experience the culture that they grew up in and be able to experience that.
Wow.
And have and we all create a community where the elders, which is what you're doing, which is the elders can talk to the young people and experience it with them.
Wow. Well,
That's
Alison,
my dream.
Wow. We could be here for the next 2 or 3 hours because you're a great interviewee.
I can talk. talk.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
I love it. And I mean, because we, you know, it was really enlightening for me. I mean, because now I know you a little better than I, you know, just having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I want to thank you for coming on our show and sharing your story. And hopefully, you know, to get around the world, you know, and people can hear it. But excellent interview and beautiful things that you're doing for young people and for the music. Keep doing what you're doing. You know, whatever you're doing is working.
I'm trying. And thank you for having this.
Oh, yes.
You are becoming an institution in the D.C. metropolitan area that allows, that's sharing the history and the legacy. Mm-hmm. We're trying to do the same things in different ways. Yeah. We've got to pass this legacy on.
Doubt. All right now. Thank you again.
You're welcome.
There it is. Diva Blue, Alison Crockett. This is a conversation in jazz, and we'll see you on the next one.
So go ba ba da ba be boo boo bit ya do bo be da boy sa da do ga di da do bo bo ba da ba bo bo be di do 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 so di do di lu do 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 you we da do bo bo ba di ya bo ba so ba da ba ba do bo be bo ba do be ya bo do be da bo be da we do say do say ya do ba di ya do ba do da dum. Sign dum bong gun dum bottom ba uba dip baby dick a tip super duper